Cool. So let's settle something here real quick. Raise your hand if you're team classic ski. Okay. What about team skate? Okay. Just as long as there's no snowboarders, we're fine. Anybody here like just starting cross country skiing? Great. You know what they say, right? Just make sure you picked a small country. Nobody? Land? Okay. All right, well, I'm done. Lisa's gonna take over.
All right, I'll take that mic here. How do I go to the next one?
Or use the mouse here to start.
Okay. So as Jason mentioned, I am a Nordic skier, accomplished in that I have many years under my belt. I'm really lucky that my parents were really into Nordic skiing. So when I was 2, they got me on skis. So I've got 29 years of skiing under my belt. I raced as a kid and then I transitioned just to some more running. I ran track in college. And then I decided that running track sucks and skiing is better. So I transitioned back to more competitive Nordic skiing and then raced recently the couple of different rendezvous races down in West, the 50K a couple times. Been having a blast with that. And I've been a PT here at Excel since 2020. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, well, I'm AJ. Like Jason said, I like to talk a lot, so I'll keep it short. But I grew up in the Midwest, not Nordic skiing. Moved out west and did everything but Nordic ski for a long time. I ran cross country and track in college too, and then competitively afterwards. And when I moved to Bozeman, I realized it was another expensive hobby I had to get into. And so got into Nordic skiing because David here, you can't work here unless you Nordic ski. And so he set me up with a way too nice of a pair of skis, which I still try really hard on right now, but I'm learning, being taught. So I've been skiing for about 4 years, and I worked really hard to keep up with Lisa. It might not look good, but I'm staying there. So got a good teacher. I think she and I both have a really good background in competitive sports, outdoor sports, and we are very lucky to get to work with a lot of the BSF athletes and like local community people, which have been really helpful teaching me. So I'll be calling on some of you guys back there and stuff.
And as evidence, we are also married to each other.
Yeah, cool. So just a little bit of overview tonight. We're going to dive into some of the common complaints we see when Nordic skiers come on in here. We're going to touch on some strength and stability aspects, some of the mobility and flexibility aspects, when to actually see us if this hasn't helped you stay out of here, and then finally kind of round into some questions, overview what we're going to be up to. So ideally talk about what we see and then hopefully how to prevent it, and then circle back into questions on what we didn't clarify well enough. But if you have questions throughout the way, just yell, raise your hand, throw something. We'll watch for it.
Happy to answer. All right, so let us dive into common complaints with Nordic skiing. So we're going to start down at the feet and work our way up. Usually we see people coming in here for either arch or big toe pain. That is usually a result of bad mobility, bad preparation, bad weight training preparation specifically. Oftentimes when people are transitioning from sports, how many people out here are also cyclists? So yeah, how much do you think your big toe and your arch is involved with cycling? Not a heck of a lot, but it is a lot more involved with the boot position in skiing. So that is a common complaint. Just as you get back on skis, a lot more forces and pressure going through your arch and your big toe can cause some problems down the road if you don't take care of it early on. And then moving up the chain, we've got your anterior, so the front of your hip, and then the lateral, the side of your hip. Those are resulting in lack of movement specific preparation. So a lot of the times when we are sliding on snow, we are having to really stay stable through our hip. And that's not something we often train in the summer because we don't have snow in the summer. It's hard to get slippery. So that is a common source of complaint as well. And then moving further up the chain, we've got low back and hip. Hip kind of just broadly including back of your hip up into the low back. There's a lot of repetitive forces in Nordic skiing if that's not something that you are used to throughout the summer with either cycling, hiking, running. Those are forces that might be new as when the winter comes up. So that's something that we see here and here as well.
Okay, so here's what we see. everybody comes into the fall, they've been biking and running and doing M-laps for the last 3 months. So they probably have some degree of knee pain already. Okay. But we get those first couple snows, right? And sourdough's kind of finally getting stomped in, or crosscuts secretly rolling and everybody's sneaking up there. But then we get those big snows in the late December, and everybody's like, I want to go cross country skiing, right? And so, like Lisa mentioned, in the summer, we have a lot of different activities that, while they're stressful on our tissues and our muscles, they're different. The demands of skiing are, albeit maybe subtler and less impact, or a little bit of different variety, some upper body and lower body, but they are different in the sense that they load your tissues uniquely. And so everybody goes from not skiing for, I don't know, 8 months, 9 months, to crosscut on Monday, crosscut on Wednesday, crosscut on Saturday, crosscut on Sunday. And then the second week, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, right? So we're seeing this drastic ramp up in that specific activity. And while, yes, you can be training and, having other demands, a lot of times our body isn't prepped in a specific way for that stress and strain, okay? And so what we see is people come in and they're like, my arch started hurting, or my hips started hurting, or my back hurts. And my question is like, and they're like, well, I'm just cross country skiing. And it's like, well, how much? And they're like, well, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. It's like, well, what'd you do the week before? And they're like, well, I rode my gravel bike. Like, I haven't skied since, March or whatever. So the typical scenario we see is, again, that kind of ramp up in activity. Maybe there's some training in the background. Maybe they have a lingering injury. Those get accentuated. They get excited. And I kind of call it the overstoker mode, where everybody's like overstoked. Like, let's go, go, go. And they kind of forget about the things they need to. So that's kind of what we're going to try to hopefully help you understand how not to do, and kind of put some blocks in place so that we don't have to come in and then I don't have to walk you to the room and then you have to tell me you went skiing Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and now something hurts. Okay. Maybe in March, but probably shouldn't be right now. Okay.
All right. So AJ dove into this a little bit, but you may be wondering, why does this happen? Why specifically me? So we touched on this a little bit, but there's lack of that specific tissue loading. So people come in here with a pretty good cardio base, but they don't have those specific tissue loading. So going from the arch, from the toe to the lateral hip to your low back, all of that requires a really specific loading pattern that you might not be getting if you're not really focusing on it in kind of like this early season, maybe preferably starting in October. Also, just as AJ mentioned, you've got that really quick transition into weight bearing. Maybe you were doing running before. If you were, fantastic. A lot of us are cyclists. I'm a cyclist. It's a very different force on your body going from biking to skiing. Even from hiking to skiing can be a bit of a difference. And then with that same overstoker syndrome, you've got bad recovery. So you're skiing maybe 15K the first day, 26K the second day, maybe easy day at 20K on the third day. Like, that's your body's not recovering well enough at that time. And it's a novel season. Your body's getting back into it. You need to give yourself a little bit more recovery. And then we'll get into this a little bit more, but poor mobility and poor stability. There are a lot of different movements that are required from Nordic skiing. We'll talk a lot about this in a couple slides as well. And then same with that overstoke syndrome, rapid intensity changes. Just you got to dive into it a little bit easier so that you don't result in overstoke syndrome.
Cool. So again, now that we know what to expect, how can we stop it from happening? So like Lisa alluded to, a lot of it is, prepping. I like to think of it like cooking, right? There's a couple of things that set you up for a good meal, right? A good recipe, good ingredients, and then a couple of good people on your team to help things going. So that'd be us, coach, massage therapist, okay? And so one way to do that is to put really good ingredients in place. So we're going to dive into some stability and mobility and some strength training things here so that you can work on those tissue specific things, those mobility demands, those specific actions that you're going to need that, again, you don't quite get when you're running, you don't get when you're hiking, you don't get when you're biking, so that as you transition into some more of those longer, harder days, your body's more prepared for it. And again, you'll be able to sustain that longer and do that more repeatedly with less of that chance of kind of falling off the other side of the ramp up. And then one of the things we want to make sure we do, and I think this is something that's forgotten, is as we ideally build up and we get into that, mid-February, we're kind of like hitting our stride. Maybe we made it through smoothly in that ramp up. No, little aches, pains in our way. It's finding a way to undulate the amount we're doing, the intensities we're doing well enough so that we can maintain those high volumes and those bigger ski days without seeing this kind of boom bust cycle of like, I can go really big on Saturday, but then I need Monday, Tuesday off. So how do we implement a strategy so that you can build up to that point, keep some of the mobility and stability and strength things in, not that you need to do them every day like you might be supplementing on your way up in this early season, but how do we put those factors in place or maintain those habits so that you're able to sustain the longevity of the season? Because I'm sure myself included, again, build, get to the middle of the season, skiing a lot, and now all of a sudden, like, I'm hanging on for those last couple ski days, dealing with this, that, and the other thing. Okay.
Okay. Okay, so we have a bit of a routine going here with mobility and flexibility. People are welcome to get up and practice this if you would like. Otherwise, we'll just kind of walk through and talk through them.
I'm also happy to send any of these videos to anybody that's curious about it. I tried to create a YouTube video, but I'm simple.
Didn't work.
It didn't
Yeah.
So.
But yeah, if anyone wants a reminder of what these are, talk to us afterwards. We're happy to send them out.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you just want to take a photo, that's fine too. But starting on this left side here, you've got this nice photo of AJ stretching the front of his hip. That's really important for classic skiing in particular. If you don't have a lot of motion through the front of your hip, your body's going to find that motion somewhere else. And that generally is your low back. So having a really good mobile front of your hip. So you got this kneeling down stretch. You can tuck your foot up on the back of your couch, coffee table, whatever's comfortable for you. And then lower down on that photo, you've got kind of stretching the adductors, the inside of your hips. I don't know if these, I guess it's kind of all individual videos here. Okay, yeah, no worries. This one, AJ is rocking back and forth a little bit to get a little bit more motion through the inside of his hip. It also will stretch more so at the back of your hip. You can do this leaning forward. You can do this sitting up. There's a lot of variety in this to find what works best for your body. Moving down the road, we've got ankle dorsiflexion. So this is one that is important for both skate and classic, but probably a little bit more so for classic. Just making sure that you've got really nice, good mobility in your ankles. Otherwise, like I mentioned before, if you don't have that mobility in one area, your body will find it somewhere else. So that might be your feet, that might be your hips, that might be your knees. Your body is different than my body. It might find it somewhere different. So we've got this front of the foot mobility, and then also kind of this, a little bit more of a twist, this dorsiflexion with a twist. So we've got a specific tool here at Excel to kind of get that inside of the foot mobility, kind of that mid-foot mobility. If you don't have anything fancy like that, you've also got a folded up towel that you can just plop the side of your foot on, do a little bit of that kind of twisting motion that you might get more so with skate skiing. And then moving up into the back, you've got that mid back. So who owns a foam roller? Who uses their foam roller? Good, that's more hands. So yeah, this back extension, this is really good so that you don't get any sort of lingering back or shoulder pain when you're doing a lot of double polling. You got to have good mobility when you're trying to climb fast up hills. So yeah, I got mid back mobility, both in extension, which we got here, and then rotation, which AJ's got here. So just grab your poles, throw them behind your back in a kneeling position, just get a little bit of a twist going, and you can do this on both sides as well.
Perfect. So I think it's one thing to have the ability to, or the ingredients, let's go back to my cooking analogy, to create a good looking ski form, right? And so if we think about either classic or skate, I'm going to buy a skate because it's the better one. It's the only pair of skis I own, so bear with me. But you're going to get into that hip extension, kind of that leg out to the side. And then when you're pushing off on the, and so we want to work that hip behind us, kind of leg out. foot one's important because as we load that side we're on, again, that shin's coming over the top. And then when we push out, we're getting that splaying kind of our foot and our arch. That specifically, in my opinion, I think is one of the most important ones to work because that's, unless you're doing a whole lot of cutting or maybe pickleball playing all summer, you don't get a lot of that force through your foot arch and lower leg in any of the other activities. So that's one that it's usually not used to.
That's this one right here, going back to that.
Yeah.
They just talking about.
And then while we like to think of cross country skiing as a pretty leg dominant sport, it is pretty important to be able to extend to get our arms up. Okay. And then if we think about how we're kind of pulling and twisting a lot of the times as we're going uphill, and also we've seen some really good studies with the better ability of that back extension to increase our breathing capacity. So wouldn't it be nice to be able to breathe a little easier while you're out there too? And honestly, it just feels really good. So we want to be able to have some of that, those key elements in our movement ability. But to make that even better, maybe we need to make sure that once we get that mobility, we're able to use those muscles and load those muscles and make them powerful through those ranges. Otherwise, it's just, extra that we don't need. So when we're working on that hip extension and that one out to the side, we really want to make sure that we're loading our lateral hip and our posterior chain, because that's where a lot of our stability and our strength comes from. That's that big push back here. So that's those top 4 exercises are working a little bit of the legs and the lateral hips there. In addition to some of the trunk on the 2 to the inside of the right, which, as we all know, because I'm sure like me, you get tippy every once in a while. We need that stability on one side to anchor there so that we can develop a lot of pushing force. Okay. And then in that one there, that's right, we got this. Okay. This one, it's one to kind of prep that ankle and those legs. So again, if we think classic, you're pushing pretty much in a straight line. Again, the more we're going uphill, the more we're going to wedge those feet out. So we're starting to slowly adapt those tissues, that foot, into some of those different ranges. And again, it's really good to help develop that pushing force with that ankle. Right here, Lisa is working a little bit of that stability. So she's on one leg. This band has got a little tension on it, and she is fighting a little this twist. Again, so if you're thinking about that glide phase, we're really on that leg. We're trying to avoid this and all that twisting. So the more powerful we can be and the more stable we can be during that glide phase, again, the better that glide's going to be, assuming you got your wax right. And I think, again, similar to runners, one couple of the forgotten areas is that upper body. So the top one here, Lisa's working a row. So this could be a row from here. It could be a row down, or it could even be a lat pull. Okay, because from here we use a lot of lats as we're pulling, and a lot of core too. But to keep it simple, we're giving you relatively easy ones to work on. And then this push-up hold here for a few seconds that she's working on really helps develop, again, not to go too deep, but your pecs and your lats are your big pullers, both from here and here. This is also, if you've ever, you can try it if you want, really works to control and recruit a lot of your trunk muscles so that you are developing that really tightness and that core action right there when you are pulling. Plus it doesn't require any equipment. So it's kind of another reason why I threw that in there. But there is a lot of exercises to do, but these are the couple of the ones that I would highly recommend at least starting or trying to implement, just to get your body and some of the tissues, the muscles, the movement, the patterns ready as you start to increase your skiing and develop that, going through these months here. And if any of you have been a patient here, like 2 people in the back, they're probably already doing all these.
Yeah. A lot of those exercises too. Oh, this is still you actually. A lot of those exercises don't require a lot of equipment, which is really nice. It doesn't require going to a gym. It doesn't require, buying anything new. Usually you've got something around the house that you can use for weight or something that is, easy to do to get these exercises in.
Yeah. And so in addition, but also important to the previous slide, with that strength focus, I would usually recommend more of these compound movements, like these big step ups, like a deadlift, a squat, a split squat, weighting these as much as you can earlier in the season, develop that bigger base. It's kind of like throwing more money in the bank. It's a bigger compound lift. So kind of investing in what I like to call those mutual funds activity, because they have like a big return on, their involvement. Some of the other ones are more kind of like those penny stocks where you're working on those small ones, but they're definitely necessary as well. So combining both kind of the compound movements, a hinge, a squat, and a step up are pretty specific to both downhill and cross country skiing, but then also not forgetting more like the single joint movements. Again, the heel raises, the side plank, where you're just moving one joint rather than moving a bunch of joints through the range. So one is not better than the other. It's kind of that unique combination of the two, depending upon what you need, what your demands are, and kind of where you're at with all those movements.
All right, so you did all this stuff, you started it early, you did all the right things, you're sleeping well, you're eating well, you're managing stress, and things still go wrong. It happens. So you're probably wondering, when is it best to come and see AJ, myself, Jason, Kylie, one of us to help you out. So everyone's going to have some aches and pains early on in the season, but sometimes it's just more than annoying. And when that feeling is more than annoying, it might be time to start seeking one of us out. That will be notable if you are starting to cut your ski season or your ski day short because your arch hurts or your hip hurts. If you say, I really am in pain when I skate ski, but I can classic okay, that might be time to come see us too. If you're really changing up the way that you're doing things and you don't want to do that, come see us. And if your pain tends to get worse when you ski and doesn't really seem to warm up and go away, that's a good time to come on in and see us. Usually when we do something new, you might have some weird aches and pains, but they should even out over the coming days to weeks, as long as you're doing things well and you don't have overstoke syndrome. So it should warm up. All these kind of lingering aches and pains should get moving and go away. But if they don't, probably time to come in and see us. And then same thing, if you've got kind of this lagging, annoying thing that's just not really going away and it's been about a month, that's a good time to think about seeing one of us, because you don't want to wait 6 months and say, damn, that whole season I was dealing with this knee thing or this hip thing or this back thing. I really wish I'd managed that earlier. So if it's been about a month and it hasn't really changed, that's a good time to come see us.
So big picture, have a plan. All right. Like, what is my goal for the ski today? How does this fit in with the week? How does it fit in with the coming weeks? Is it going to get me to where I want to get to 2 months from now? Or am I just a kid in a candy store because the trails are great and I've got an extra 3 hours? Okay. So have a look in the mirror and be an adult. It's tough. I have to tell myself that sometimes too, but make sure you know why you're doing and what you're doing, what you're doing and why you're doing it. Make sure that you are supplementing with some degree of strength training. Again, right now is a good time to probably have a little bit more of that in place, a little bit more frequency of it, because again, we don't want to compound both the strength training and the skiing at the same time, because ultimately more and more isn't always better. But again, with snow being a little scarce and having more time, now's a good time to implement that. Mobility, there's a couple things I would guarantee as we get older and as athletes, we're always going to lose mobility. So we're playing the game of keeping it. So it's better to have it than to be wishing you had it. So it's something to make sure you should be working on. And for cross country skiing specifically, that upper back, those hips, and that foot and that ankle for sure. Skill, which I shouldn't be one to speak to, but there's a lot of great people at CrossCut that do lessons. And I think, coming to a lesson with good ingredients, with somebody who's got a really great recipe, is going to land a really good outcome. Okay. And then recovery. So there's a really famous saying that I like to use: stress plus rest equals growth. Okay. So there's two sides to that coin. It's not stress plus stress plus stress. And we really only improve when we're allowing our body to adapt what we've done to it in the previous days or the culmination of previous days. So ultimately, more is not always better. Cool. And just a real quick shout out and also a thank you. I think we're pretty lucky to live in Bozeman with the great access to trails. And so, CrossCut's got an amazing network. The Bridger Ski Foundation, obviously, there's more than just that map, and everybody who grooms it. And then one that we are kind of hoping to look into soon, but I've heard great things about, is the B-Bar Ranch over in Paradise Valley. Now has about 20 miles of groomed trails. So another really cool local, great opportunity for some good skiing. All right.